It is noon on Tuesday. It must be time for the Penn State Alumni Association's virtual speaker session. I see the Zoom room filling up. Welcome to everybody who is joining us for today's presentation by Professor Nina Jablonski. She is the Evan Pugh Professor of Anthropology at Penn State, and she's going to share her insights on finding your roots and that curriculum here at Penn State. As always, let us know who you are and where you're from. Drop that information in the chat box. In the chat box, you will also see instructions on how to activate the closed captions for this program. Closed captions can be activated on the screen where you see the CC button at the bottom of your Zoom video window. Or if you're on Facebook, you can customize your experience by using the stream text link that is there in the comments. We'll be getting started in just a minute. Welcome to the virtual speaker series. I see, alumni from all over. Appalachian, New York. I see Dick Smith up there, class of 65, and Stu Tendy, also in New York. Jan down in Edgewater, Florida. Christine Mahoney, class of 88, 89 HHD. Kathleen Murphy from Arlington, Virginia, joining us. Welcome in. Heather from Hummelstown. I see Peter from Herndon, Virginia, class of 75 and 87, and Bernice from Mazatlan, Mexico. That sounds like a good place to be spending some time in quarantine and riding out the pandemic. Probably beautiful weather down there. Rob from Harrisburg, Judy from Delray Beach. Welcome in. As the Zoom room is filling up, I want to talk about a program that we have, a special collaboration by some of our colleges and campuses here at Penn State called the Cooking Classic. That'll be held Wednesday evenings from January 20th through February 10th, a series of cooking classes hosted by some of the colleges and campuses here at Penn State. To learn more, visit the link that Carrie just posted in the chat if you want more information about that great series of events that's coming up. I see Monique from Penn State Berks, Ruth from Philadelphia, Paulette from Johnson City, Tennessee, Charnice from New York City, Cynthia Williams is outing herself potentially, if I'm seeing that the right way, a Fordham class of 75. So we have a Fordham graduate joining us here, a special guest. Welcome into the Penn State Alumni Association's virtual speaker series. We will be getting started in just a minute. Where else would you rather be than a Zoom full of Penn Staters? I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association, and I'd like to welcome everybody to today's virtual speaker session, which is being recorded. Live closed captions are available for this event. You can access them by clicking the closed caption button at the bottom of your Zoom video window and then clicking Show Subtitle. You may also customize your caption view by clicking the Stream to Text link that is located in the chat box. We are streaming live today's presentation, and this live stream has been made possible through the gracious support of a donor and the Fund for Access, Ideas, and Audacious Goals. Today's presentation will be archived and available on our website after the event. This afternoon, we welcome Nina Jablonski, who is the Evan Pugh Professor of Anthropology here at Penn State. Professor Jablonski will share insight on the Finding Your Roots curriculum at Penn State. The curriculum is a joint creation of the Henry Louis Gates Jr. and Nina Jablonski, and was developed by a team of more than 30 scientists and educators. By focusing on the question of who am I, the curriculum inspires young people to investigate their own genetic and genealogical ancestry as a way of engaging them in science that is relevant and personally transformative. It was originally developed for middle school age learners in summer camp settings, but is suitable for after school programs and can easily be modified to be served as a module in regular classrooms. The curriculum is supported by the 9-part webisode series, Find Your Roots, The Seedlings, which garnered 3 Mid-Atlantic Emmy Awards in 2018 and 2019. As a biological anthropologist, Professor Jablonski studies the human and primate evolution. She has written more than 200 scholarly papers, 2 books, and 1 book for children. Jablonski received her AB in biology from Bryn Mawr College in 1975 and her PhD in anthropology from the University of Washington. She is an elected member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and the American Philosophical Society, the recipient of a Guggenheim Fellowship and an honorary doctorate from the University of Stellenbosch in South Africa for her contribution to the worldwide fight against racism. And with that, I will turn the program over to Dr. Nina Jablonski. Professor?
Thank you, Paul. Wow, it's great to be with you and all the alums. I'm just thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. Penn State is my top priority in life, and I really am just delighted to be with you at the beginning of this new year. Today, we're going to talk about one of my really biggest loves, which is educating young people about human evolution, human diversity, and where they fit into the world. And what I'm going to do is talk to you a little bit about how I got into this and then what our curriculum involves, because the story of the history of it is relevant to how it has unfolded. We all want to see kids enjoy the learning experience, but it's easier said than done to get them really engaged in the first place. One of the things that we really like is when kids begin to show genuine excitement about discovering something, and then they have the ability to sometimes share it with their family members. And sometimes they learn something so well and it's transformed them so greatly that they bring it into their own classroom and share it with their classmates. These are some of the experiences that we've had over the last several years in developing what we've called the Finding Your Roots curriculum. This really is the origin story of that curriculum. We need to talk about the major players because this idea came about as a series of conversations, 3-way conversations between Henry Louis Gates Jr., who some of you may know from his excellent PBS program, Finding Your Roots, me, and one of the former directors of the National Science Foundation, Mark Weiss. All of us shared a real great interest in getting young people motivated to study science and interested in studying specifically human genetics, human evolution, and science that related to human well-being, including medicine. And one of the things that we were united in our concern about was the fact that there were so few underrepresented minority young people who were going into the sciences. There was, and there still is, an underrepresentation of African American, Native American, Latinx, and other minority students in the STEM disciplines and who decide to major in STEM subjects in college, or who show interest in STEM subjects. And so we wanted to come up with a way that would just transform this space. How could we get kids interested? Skip Gates is a master at public engagement, and he recognized that one of the biggest draws that people have, not only to his program, but to this idea in general, is the study of themselves. And he mooted with me more than 10 years ago, Nina, why don't we do something about building a curriculum that gets kids to study themselves? And so we took some of the magic spirit of Gates' Finding Your Roots PBS program, that incredible sort of epiphany that guests experience in discovery, and combined that with self-discovery for young people in a classroom. Because we realized, okay, it's one thing for an adult in front of a TV camera to have a personal realization, but what about catalyzing that personal realization for a young person in a classroom or a summer camp or an after-school program? And that realization continues to ferment in the most positive way into continued interest in science and possibly the making of a scientific or medical or mathematics career. So, thanks to the good connections that we all had, we assembled what we call the Genetics and Genealogy Working Group, a group of scientists of virtually all stripes, mostly natural scientists, including many different kinds of geneticists and evolutionary biologists, bioethicists, historians, sociologists, and educators, to come together to think about this. We had some great working meetings convened with the support of the National Science Foundation. And to make a long story short, we began to assemble the sort of the primordial globe of this curriculum. It took us a while to get some financial support, but we got some initial important support for the development of this curriculum from the Rockefeller Foundation and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And our questions really distilled down to a few major ones. How can we increase for young people? How can we increase the efficacy of student learning? How can we get them to sort of be engaged and then remember something? How can we get them to be interested in something, and not just interested for 30 seconds or 5 minutes or even an afternoon, but interested in a sustained way so that they actually want to pursue learning more about a subject? How can we stimulate student engagement and participation in the long term? So long after a lesson is finished, how can we have planted a seed that will actually continue to germinate and grow long after the lesson has passed? And lastly, how can a study of who am I help to really catalyze and increase diversity and inclusion in STEM subjects and STEM disciplines? How can we basically develop a more broadly based, scientifically literate and engaged society, especially in the United States? So initially, we decided upon a few different venues for curriculum development. Because we wanted to use this combined approach of studying personal DNA and personal genealogy, we figured that the best way to start out would be in some voluntary opt-in program. And so we began with summer camps. And I have to single out here that the biggest buy-in we got was in the fine summer camp program run by the Penn State Eberly College of Science, the so-called Science U summer camp program. The directors of Science U have been just terrific in their support of our work here. But the key thing was to provide a venue where kids and their parents could opt into this, as opposed to something that would be mandatory or that kids might feel compelled to do in a classroom. We also, as part of this greater project, developed modules for studying genetics and genealogy in undergraduate classrooms, undergraduate biology classrooms. This wasn't done at Penn State. This was done at Spelman College in Atlanta and was terrifically successful. This was led by one of my colleagues, Dr. Aditi Pai. And lastly, but certainly not least, was to be able to develop materials that could be made readily and freely available to people around the world if they wanted to do this themselves. We didn't want to get all of this grant money and all of this wonderful human energy devoted to something that was just going to fizzle after a few years. We wanted to be able to create some lasting work that would be freely available for people that would help them if they wanted to do this as at-home learning material, or in an after-school program if they were a teacher or a science teacher or a history teacher. We wanted to give maximum versatility. And so we started out in the development of these summer camp classrooms initially. And what we focused on was firstly understanding DNA, the hereditary material inside all of our cells, and basically the nature of heredity. We were working in our program with middle school aged students, about 11 to 13, and they really already knew a little bit about DNA and science, so we weren't proposing something altogether new to them, but what we were doing was giving them hands-on exercises in a summer camp atmosphere so that they could actually see DNA and begin to understand really what it does in all of our cells. So we had students extract DNA from pieces of fruit, as well as extract their own DNA from samples of their cheek cells. We also had them investigate their own personal DNA ancestry and genealogy. And this we did by partnering with the ancestry company, the DNA ancestry company called 23andMe. We chose this company several years ago because of our previous connections with the company. But as many of you know, there are lots of DNA ancestry companies out there that provide good ancestry services. And we partnered with the New England Historical Genealogical Society to help us give guidance on constructing genealogy lessons for a very diverse group of kids. And what we did was, with the help of Elizabeth Wright, shown here, our major curriculum writer, was develop a curriculum, a summer camp curriculum, a modularized curriculum that stepped kids through all of these different areas, understanding what DNA is, the nature of heredity, how to investigate their own DNA ancestry and their own genealogy. And what you see here is Dr. Wright with one of our campers looking at their own genealogical records that they were able to download using publicly available sources. And the students really went to town. They really got interested in it. As we know, people are really interested in themselves, and they absolutely love studying things about themselves and discovering things about themselves. Kids were absolutely, their interest couldn't be quenched. And it was so exciting for us because we thought, okay, we think this is a good idea, but when you actually see kids becoming interested, that's a whole nother thing. And one of the exciting things that we did was we created big maps on the wall of the lab so that kids could actually show on a map for all of their colleagues where their ancestors were from and where they had come to over the years. And as you can see, they had come from all sorts of places before ending up somehow in the United States in a Penn State classroom. And we also had students think about why people look different from one another. The beauty of working with middle school age kids is that they really want to learn about stuff like, why is our face shaped in a particular way? Why do some people have big noses? Some people have little noses. Why do some people have light skin? Why do some people have dark skin? We got kids interested in studying themselves. Why do we have the bodies that we do? Sometimes adults get very super sensitive about this, but young people just want to know, and they want the tools for finding out. And we gave them these tools. And what we found was that students just, again, went to town. They really were interested in understanding why skin color, for instance, as we see here, was different in different kids, and understanding why that difference had evolved in the course of human evolution. And we also went deeper into the framework of our shared ancestry by looking at the evidence from comparative anatomy and paleontology about our ancestry. We had students visit the Matson Museum in the Carpenter Building, but such resources are available to lots of students elsewhere as well. We had students look at skeletons and skulls of ancestors and distant relatives and try to figure out, hey, what is this? Why is this one more closely related and this one not, and so forth. In other words, kids were engaging directly with evidence. And in the shape of our curriculum, what we could do is basically allow them to come to their own deductions about the unity of humanity. We may look different superficially, but those differences really are incredibly superficial. We share a huge amount of our DNA and our ancestry. We share the fact that we all basically love to do the same things too. And the other thing that we emphasized in our curriculum was it's okay for you as a kid to be a scientist. We actually gave them the responsibility at the end of the camp to develop their own research project. Of course, we provided all sorts of logistical support through our instructors and mentors, but the kids came up with their own projects and followed through in doing research and then creating a little project display. So again, it was gratifying and important to see how resourceful kids were. And over again, they would quietly ask us, is this okay? And we would say, yeah, of course it's okay. Here, we'll help you get this, we'll help you get that. And before we knew it, they were off and running. All of them created exciting, interesting, and engaging projects of their own. Some of these dealt with some of the lessons that they had experienced on the evolution of skin color. Others were really like, out of their heads and so exciting. One student did a whole genealogy of magical traits, such as those you would see in a video game or in a fanciful movie. So we had kids just unleashing their imagination, as well as some of them, their artistic abilities. The last piece that was really important for us was engaging with Penn State's superior public broadcasting station, WPSU. For those of you who are not familiar with WPSU, please check it out online because it's a great public broadcasting station. And several people from WPSU wanted to sort of get involved. How can we sort of look in on this program, Nina, and maybe make a series of episodes that can bring this to a wider audience? We're so happy that we engaged with them. And here on the far left, Christian Berg, flanking Skip Gates on your right is Shireen Stanford. Both of these are producers at WPSU and absolutely wonderful creative people who said, what you have here is transformative, not just for these kids in this room, but for a much broader audience. And they helped us to create a series of online, on-demand webisodes. You can go to a website, www.fyrclassroom, findingyourrootsclassroom.org, and find 9 webisodes in the Finding Your Roots, the Seedlings series. And on this website, you'll not only find the webisode series, but the full curriculum in a variety of different ways and special ways that you can actually unfurl this and use this curriculum in full or in part at home, because we know now so many parents and teachers are working at home or in virtual classroom spaces. The episodes, there are 9 of them, including an initial overview, and the last one, a presentation of final projects. All of these hit really important topics, including things like visible traits like skin color. And there are all sorts of ways, as I said, not only to download, but to customize the curriculum that you can do on the website. We're very proud that this curriculum has gone far. These webisodes each are around 8 to 10 minutes, and they're well worth watching, even if you're not interested in pursuing this, because they're well done. And if you enjoy watching kids learn, you can see these sparks happening as the kids are filmed and as they have various realizations about the information they've uncovered. I'm not being too immodest by saying I think we really earned those 3 Mid-Atlantic Emmys because our programs really were transformative. Like I say, everything is available at this site. You'll be able to go to it and refer to it after this. And there is also a great summary video about the whole program that is on a National Science Foundation website that is linked here. I'm not going to go to that right now, but you can come back to the recording and get this link and look at that roughly 15-minute video. That's a great summary. What we saw was that there was just tremendous self-directed research interest, and that students were really engaged. So coming back to our initial research questions, was there engagement and student interest? Yes, students really liked science when they could take these abstractions like DNA and apply it to themselves, when they could take lessons about American history and apply it to themselves by looking at their own genealogy. And we saw example after example of sustained interest. Kids who long after, months after, took their lessons home with them, literally, and shared it with family members, like this family during Thanksgiving in the autumn after their summer camp experience. And these wonderful young women who were learning for the first time from one of their classmates who had been inspired. And this young woman has gone on not only to teach these classmates, but many other classmates, and to start a major genetics and genealogy program in her own high school. When things like this happen, when fires are ignited, every educator, every guardian, parent, any human being has got to be happy and excited. And what we're seeing in the long term is just a tremendous amount of continued engagement. And not only sort of interest in science, but also an interest in the importance of science. We know now, especially as we're dealing with the realities of the COVID-19 pandemic in the United States, that having people, regular people, everybody, have some understanding of the science of what's going on is really important. And what we found in our kids and in their circles of acquaintances and family is that there was greater interest, engagement, and advocacy for a scientific viewpoint. Where can this take us? It can take us really far. And we're looking ahead to continuing to develop this curriculum at Penn State and elsewhere. And really now we're thinking that what we have developed are tools for self-interrogation and learning, and we're developing young people who feel confident about being scientists of themselves and scientists of the world. Who am I? To who I am. Not in an overconfident way, but in a way that allows them to interrogate evidence and be full citizens. What next? We're really excited that we've received financial support from the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, the bioactive educational wing, to support further development of this curriculum in the next few years for high school and undergraduate students. And again, all the materials will be distributed through our own Penn State and the HHMI websites entirely free of charge. I want to thank a lot of people, but most especially highlighted in yellow, all of the Penn State colleges that supported us, my own College of Liberal Arts, the Eberly College of Science, and Outreach WPSU. They have all provided just terrific, terrific support. Thank you very much for your engagement with this program. And now I'd like to turn it over to Paul to see if you guys have any questions.
Nina, fascinating topic. I'm sure we are going to get a lot of questions from those who are participating with us today. We did have some that were submitted, and I just want to put out a little bit of a disclaimer. You and I were talking off camera before, and the work that you're focused on and like where your expertise lies is primarily on the science side of this project. And so while there might be an interest in asking questions about the genealogy and the research side of this, you're probably better positioned to handle questions around the more scientific approaches. And so, as we dive into some of these questions, I'm going to handle those more science-based questions. Some of you had already submitted questions about genealogical aspects of this project. We do have answers for you. Those answers will be emailed to you um, after the program, but we're just not going to handle those live. We're going to let the expert talk about things that she has expertise on. So why don't we start with this? This is a sensitive topic when you're talking about children that are adopted. How do you consider the needs of students who are adopted and may not know anything about their biological relatives in this type of curriculum? I would imagine some of your students are adopted into the families that they grow up in, and um, how do you handle that as part of this curriculum?
Thanks. It's a really important question. In our research projects, and we really ran a whole series of camps over 2 years. So we had many adoptive children, young people in our camps. And what we did was deal with this quite forthrightly. First of all, we made sure that we engaged with their adoptive parents so that we knew that the parents had had a conversation with the children in advance about their adoptive status. I think now, at least in the United States, it's far more common for kids to know that they've been adopted when they're quite young. It's no longer something that's considered, any to have really any significance.
Right.
And so what we did with those kids was we talked about their real biological genetic ancestry and their adoptive ancestry. Now, we had a few really interesting cases where we couldn't get anywhere in exploring their own genetic background. And so the kids were all really good about this. They said, well, I'd like to really look into my adoptive family's background then. And so they did investigations of their adoptive family as opposed to themselves. And what we also tried was that kids who were adopted, as well as other kids in the camp, would look at the DNA backgrounds and genealogy of people who were real, but not in the camp at all or not related. We had people, for instance, look at important historical figures and study everything about them. And what we found, somewhat to our surprise, was that kids were just really engaged in this. They thought it was so cool to be able to unpack their own personal history and their DNA ancestry if it was available. So we were surprised that kids were interested in people other than themselves. And this really buoyed us upward with respect to how we could deploy this curriculum more broadly in public school classrooms, for instance, by using non-personalized information so that there wouldn't be risk of privacy disclosures or disclosing things that families or kids didn't really want to know.
Nina, talk a little bit about the benefits that children gain from studying this. I would wonder if there are psychological benefits to them being more in touch with knowing thyself. I'm wondering about the kind of cultural acuity and kind of are they getting kind of cultural dexterity, if you will,
Yeah.
by having these conversations these age appropriate conversations of where they are. Um, Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a great set of questions, Paul. What we're finding is that students feel confident about investigating. So they're confident about being sort of scientific sleuths of themselves but they're also confident about talking about it. They realize that, okay, this is basically factual information that on its own doesn't have any opinions attached to it. And so I can talk about it, I can compare it with somebody else's, and really we can discover the interest in it. And so kids are developing, I think, a very sophisticated view of how to talk about themselves as people, as sort of human individuals, without a lot of the cladding that society places on our identity later in development. We chose this middle school age group for a reason, because kids are so interested in their own place in a family or in their peer group or in the world. They're trying to figure out what's going on here. Who am I? And so for them to be able to get this information, be sort of self-efficacious, find it themselves, and then talk about what it means, that sense-making piece with their classmates and with knowledgeable teachers who weren't afraid to talk about this themselves, that really was a magical piece.
So, um, when you were developing this curriculum, and obviously, I think when we think about the word curriculum, right, we think about developing it for students. But we have a question coming in here. Uh, could this curriculum be relevant, or can it be adapted for older populations of alumni who might be tuning in? I'm thinking like, is it possible to do something through like Osher Lifelong Learning, for example, on a topic like this?
I have to say, Paul, this is one of the most common questions that we get, because most family members, when they see all the fun that their kids have had or their grandkids have had, say, why don't we have something like this? And so there's every reason that these modules can be customized for personal situations, for adults, for seniors. This is the beauty of it. You can take a little bit, you can take a lot, you can do it in your kitchen or you know, around a family dining room in post-COVID times, and you can really tailor it. And we're going to continue to build these resources so that they will be usable modules that can be really deployed in almost any context for almost any age group.
So this one might be a little bit out of your expertise, but you did mention that you partnered with 23andMe. I know many people have now taken DNA tests for family research,
Mhm.
ancestry, family tree, DNA, GEDmatch. Do you have any recommended kind of user-friendly sites to help people like self-educate on how to understand the chromosomal data that they're being provided?
Yeah, many of these companies, especially the bigger, older players, have really good public education sites. There are also some good public education sites generally available now that are not associated with any company. When you're choosing which company to use, don't necessarily go on price alone. There are lots of cut rate DNA ancestry companies that basically give you a cheap set of test results because they're taking all your personal data and selling it on to other purveyors. And if you value your privacy, which most of us do, you don't really want to go down that route. So this is really a case of the buyer beware. And what I would suggest for people who are really just interested in their ancestry is to go to a site and just get ancestry information as opposed to a full panel of information, including health information, because then there's not any concern about finding out about a disease that you may not want to know about. Not that very many of these sites provide that information, but unless you really want that health information, just go to a DNA ancestry site or just check the DNA ancestry box when you're selecting the tests that or test results that you want.
So can you talk a little bit about, look, you're a scientist, right? And all of the work that you do is based in science, but we have seen how science has become politicized, has become controversial, right? You think of the pandemic, you think of
Yeah.
global warming, but there are some controversies with some of this work as well. How do you deal with the controversies about the accuracies of the tests for less studied populations versus Europeans? And well, let me stop it there before I go further and
Yeah, I think
address that.
the approach here is really how we look sort of using a scientific method at the nature of evidence. When we study DNA ancestry, we have to recognize that these personal DNA companies have not sampled across the board of world populations evenly according to the distribution of people, not by any means. We have a sample that's very skewed according to generally European and North American populations, people generally of European ancestry. And so we have to recognize that those results are by themselves biased. And so I think the best way to deal with this is just in a forthright way. This is not perfect. And if you belong to a group that is not well represented, including many Native American groups, some Latinx groups, some African American groups, then you really need to make sure that if you can afford it, that you go to a few different DNA ancestry sites, because each one of these services will have a different database. Again, the buyer beware, and be scientific and dispassionate about assessing the service that you're using. And also speak forthrightly to your family members and friends about this and find out what their experiences are.
Yeah. So, what resources and strategies do you find valuable in discussing topics such as, sticking again with controversial hypothesis about race, right? Some of these tests come back and they give racial profiles, if you will, and talk about genetic causes for the differences in race. Can you touch on that a little bit?
What we do is, again, deal with this forthrightly. There's no point in sort of trying to skirt these potentially sensitive issues. And what we realize is that races as categories were created by 18th century natural historians and philosophers in Europe. And when kids, first of all, realize this, they say, oh, right. So then we break it down and we say, well, if they had had this information that we have now, what they would see is that there's this gradual gradation of skin color, limb length, ear shape. Basically, humans don't come in categories.
Right.
They come in all sorts of shades of color, a continuum of color. They come in a continuum of shapes and sizes. And so when they realize this as part of the evolutionary study, and then they look back at these racial categories as they exist in the United States or elsewhere, they can say, well, these are wrong. And I guess the beautiful thing about this for me is that when you have kids come to that realization themselves, it's a real light bulb moment.
Right.
And they then think about themselves and their classmates in a new light. And if they can carry that light into the rest of their lives, wow.
So in my family we have a kind of genetic heart condition, and so we were all encouraged to take to take a DNA test and the genetics, to have our genetics tested, so that, for example, I can see which of my children might be predisposed to that. But some people are concerned about how genetic testing might be used against them in terms of being eligible for health insurance.
Yeah.
Have you run into that topic, and what
Yes.
would you say for people who have those concerns?
Yes. It's really important when you sign up for a DNA ancestry test that you read what the company provides with respect to privacy. And what you want to do is, in terms of checking boxes, is maximize your own privacy. DNA ancestry companies cannot, in the United States, divulge information to insurance companies, nor can they, offer it for a price. So this is good, but it's important that everyone realize that this information is importantly and intensely private. And if you're doing this as a family exercise, let's say with grandma, parents, and kids, make sure that everyone, including the DNA ancestry information for the minors, is well protected. This is personal, private information. When we dealt with DNA information in our classroom situations, we sampled, we whittled down the total list of traits and genes so that we were only looking at a subset of information that we thought could be publicly shared. And this really worked well because kids and most of us don't need to know everything when we're in a classroom situation, but you know enough to illustrate the points. So I would encourage people to be very private when they go to these DNA ancestry companies, be discerning, and make sure that your information isn't being sold on willy-nilly.
Excellent. A fascinating topic. We have just a couple minutes left. And, as I was introducing you, as part of your introduction, I noted the honorary doctorate that you hold. And I thought that it was interesting that it's an honorary doctorate in fighting racism from a university in South Africa. Can you share a little bit about how that came about and what you were recognized for?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Paul. Yes, many years ago, I was invited to South Africa to give a talk on my own research specialty, which is the evolution of human skin color. And that was back in 2006, that began an association with many South African institutions of higher learning and an association with South African sort of intellectuals as well as some politicians that proved to be very rewarding. As you know, South Africa, like the United States, has a history of very, very trying, dangerous racism that still persists. And this was formalized in South Africa with the apartheid system in the 1950s. The US also went through a terrible period of Jim Crow segregation after Reconstruction, which again didn't really end formally until the 1950s and 1960s. So the US and South Africa share a lot. But I was recognized by the University of Stellenbosch because they recognized that the study of human difference, like skin color, when it could be understood readily in a biological and evolutionary framework, simply lost its power. It lost its discriminatory power, and I mean that in the prejudicial sense. It's like skin color is a neutral trait that is related to the intensity of sunlight in the place or places where your ancestors lived, period. End of discussion. There's no value associated with it. So I received that honorary doctorate for developing the framework, scientific framework for that understanding and also beginning to engage, this was some years ago, beginning the process of public engagement in this knowledge. Because I've felt for years that this knowledge is transformative for us today.
Well, kudos to you and congratulations on that recognition. That's unfortunately all the time that we have today. I'd like to thank Professor Jablonski for joining us. And I also want to thank all of you who tuned in to today's virtual speaker session. As a reminder, there is a special collaboration by some of the colleges and campuses here at Penn State, the Cooking Classic. That classic will take place Wednesday evenings between January 20th and February 10th. To learn more, visit the link that's posted in our chat. Also, as a reminder, we'll be hosting more speaker sessions in the coming weeks and months, and this programming is in addition to a wide array of online networking events and career programs that are available throughout the year. You can view a full listing on our website at alumni.psu.edu. Thanks again for tuning in, and we are
Penn State.